Hi, guys. Hopefully, everyone's having a lovely week and staying home and staying safe. This is, I'm not sure the exact number, but something like high 50s or 60s number of the Microsoft 365 Pulse. I'm joined by Tamara and Tom here today, so we can go through and talk about what's going on. Jen is once again off and enjoying her time. And really what it probably is she's, being very busy. She's now a very important Microsoft regional director and stuff. So, but you're stuck with the three of us this week. We wanted to go over the most recent updates coming out to the roadmap. A lot of cool things. If you use Teams, you're getting a lot of stuff added to the roadmap. But as always, we'll kind of go through and talk about stuff, talk about what we think is the most impactful, the most important. Everything falls into one of four categories: launched, which means it's available; rolling out, which means it's in the process of going out and being available. It's somewhere in their release cycle. Planned or added in, I believe what they call it is actually in development. That just means that they've officially announced they're planning on doing it. That's where we get a lot of the new stuff that we like to talk about, but that means hopefully it's coming down sometime in the future. And then every now and then we have some stuff from canceled. We do have a couple things listed in canceled, but half the time with Microsoft, canceled is not really canceled. It means, well, we actually listed this 3 times or we're slightly delaying it or something. But those are the 4 categories that we'll kind of delve in. As always, we're going to start with what's theoretically the newest or theoretically the longest away, which is in development. So Tamara, I think you're going to go ahead and kick us off this week. Is there anything cool you wanted to talk about that has been added to in development for the roadmap?
Sure, Visio is getting some love. So there is in Visio a people gallery with modern presence experience. So it's easy to see who's collaborating on your Visio diagram and where they are in the drawing. And then also, while you were away, catching up on the highlights, know who edited your shared document since your last visit and see what's changed. So it's making it a lot easier to collaborate with Visio.
Yeah, that's always a problem when you're trying to go into a document going, I know they changed something, but what was it? So
two of my reports actually got like Visio licensing this week too. So I'm always happy to see Visio come through. I think it's one of the things that is probably not used as much as it should be. It's really awesome to create diagrams and flowcharts that I think almost any business could benefit from when they're going through and doing presentations and things. So always happy to see that. Anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nope, I'll go ahead and let Tom take over.
Yeah, okay. So we're doing this. Tom's about to cover like 95% of the new roadmap items, but there's a reason for that. We kind of agreed before the call that instead of trying to be like, oh, and here's a new thing for Teams, oh, and here's a new thing for Teams, oh, and here's a new thing for Teams, Tom would just kind of blanket, throw one over the whole top of it, kind of talk about all the stuff going on with Teams. So Tom,
here comes the fire hose. Yeah, Teams has a ton of things that went into development for this roadmap. I'm going to hit all of them, not all of them. I'm going to hit many of them at a high level here, just so you're aware that they're out there and you can start keeping an eye open for when they may come out and how they might affect your particular area. So to start it off, Cortana in Teams. They're going to work with AI and the Microsoft Graph to give you voice assistance in Teams now using Cortana. So if you're busy and you don't have a keyboard in front of you, you'll be able to, and this is in the Teams mobile app, I should add, you'll be able to say, hey, Cortana, make a call, join a meeting, send chat message, share files. I think that's really cool because my thumbs are fat and trying to get the keyboard on my mobile phone isn't great. Or just being able to say something and have it pick up and do what you want. I think that'll be a really cool thing when they get it out.
Tom and I are members of the Sausage Finger Club.
Yeah. I pushed a button. I got 5 letters. Which one did I really want? So starting into the huge list of things that we have now, Together mode for Microsoft Teams. This is being able to digitally place participants in a shared background. So it looks like you're all in the same room rather than having that Muppet Show effect of 49 different backgrounds and pictures and stuff like that laid out.
Some of these you've seen are cool. The ad I saw was like they set it up like an auditorium, and there was like a person in each seat, like stuff like that.
Yeah, right. I think that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
You put people around a business table, stuff like that.
You also
it's supposed to help with some of the cognitive dissonance.
Yes. Yeah, instead of having a bunch of different people in a bunch of different locations.
I also think, too, not to interrupt Tom, but look, you're seeing this anyways with as the about 20 other things Tom's about to talk about. I think we can all take a moment to say huge props to Microsoft with how much development they've given into Teams. There was always some cool stuff planned for Teams, and that stuff that probably the three of us have known about for a bit now seem to have all gotten fast tracked and pushed out. And now we're starting to see features that we didn't even know were being planned that are kind of being made, and they're really. I think I'm going to look at it as a positive side. I really feel like they're really putting their money where their mouth is to put investment to make a more productive work from home environment for so many people that have been displaced about what's going on with COVID and all the stuff that's happening. And like for so many organizations out there who use Office 365 already, they're really capitalizing on making Teams a more valuable thing to go through and work. What Tamara said really hit home with me when you're going through and talking about helping with the cognitive dissonance. Like that's probably not going to necessarily get them more subscriptions. It's probably not going to really see a bottom dollar return for them necessary, but it's something that makes it more comfortable or makes it more probably easy for a lot of us that are working from home to be better with the situation, more comfortable with the situation. And stuff like that is just, it's cool to see. And to be blunt, like just big round of applause for all the teams that are working so hard to bring these innovations to us. It's really, really nice to see.
Okay, so what else do we have here? We have everything. We have Dynamic View, which is using AI to dynamically optimize shared content and video participants. So this is going to allow you to do your preferences and needs, such as showing shared content, specific people side by side. Some of these things are now going to be available to you with dynamic views that are picking up based on machine learning. So that can be cool. Video filters, you'll be able to adjust the filters to subtly adjust lighting levels and soften the focus. So if you're
so bad.
Yeah, like right now you'll see her background. When she moves back and forth, she's going bright, dark, bright, dark, bright, dark. The video filter should be able to help some of that, which would be interesting. We have reflect messaging extensions, and that gives managers, leaders, or teachers an easy way to check in with how their team or students are feeling. So it's an extension that you can add in. So it's kind of giving you a pulse of how people are feeling about things as a whole. Again, may not be for every meeting that you have, but if you've got a large meeting that you're talking to a division or department, that may be a way to gauge how people are reacting to certain things. In conjunction with that, there's also something called live reactions, where you can react in a meeting using emojis. So I think this would be similar to like in Facebook, if somebody's doing a live meeting in Facebook and you're going, oh, love, life, no, anger, whatever. And you see those little emojis.
Boo.
Yeah, I didn't figure you'd like this one.
No, I meant booing during someone else's conference.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, but especially if they don't show who did it. So that's even better.
Use your powers for good, Adam. Use your powers for good.
SharePoint live presentations for Teams. This is really cool in the fact that you can be doing a PowerPoint presentation in Teams, but people are not necessarily locked into only seeing what you see. They'll be able to actually navigate their view of the slides, instant feedback for live reactions, provide comments, rate the presentations at the end. I think this is going to make for a much more dynamic PowerPoint experience when you're using that for some of your Microsoft Teams meetings. Looking forward to seeing how that plays.
I got to tell you, I'm not real thrilled about it. When I'm doing a presentation, I want control over that presentation so I can guide
looking where you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is I don't want somebody going through and saying, well, on slide 42, you say such and such. I'm on slide 4 right now, okay?
Yeah.
Give me a break. Chat bubbles. I think this is kind of interesting. Chat sent during a team meeting will surface on the screen of all meeting participants, making the chat more central to the conversation. A lot of times you have to work to get to the chat, and people are like, where's the chat? Did I do this? Having the chat more front and center, I think, is going to be very useful in this particular situation. Live captions with speaker attribution. So the live captions we've seen in various things, but now what they're going to be doing is being able to do speaker attribution. So if we had live captioning turned on right here, you'd see, oh, this is Tom talking. But then when Adam chimed in, they'd be able to have Adam's name on what this is. This is also going to, I think in one of the other things here, but it's also going to transfer over to the transcript and make it easier for people to see on the transcript who said what. So I think that's pretty cool.
I would never chime in, Tom. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Hold interactive meetings with more attendees, up to 1,000 people. Normally I would have said, I want to be in a meeting with 1,000 people. Now in the COVID world, it's like, yeah, I'm talking to an entire company. That's going to happen. So it probably takes a little bit out of the live meeting realm and now puts it more into a regular Teams meeting, which is good. Overflow meetings. This is kind of interesting. When attendees exceed the meeting attendee limit, the meeting will scale to accommodate up to 20,000 people in an experience where they can watch. So this is kind of nice if you want to have a smaller meeting in terms of people who might participate, but you want to have more people who can just chime in. It's like the overflow room. I think this is going to be really useful if you've got a large meeting that you have out there that you want people to be able to chime in, but you don't know how many people are going to show up. I think this would be kind of cool.
Yeah, so for me and all my friends, when we're doing D&D and, have 20,000 people that want to watch us, very, very valuable feature. Tamara, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, I think it's very valuable, especially for governments who are using the Teams meetings for like town halls or for approving building projects and stuff like that. And also hearing from the public about what's been going on with the protests and things. I think it's very likely that they're going to get more attendees than what they expect at some of these meetings, depending on the topic. So it's good to know that people won't get frustrated and kicked out.
That's a good point.
I like how she has a practical example from our actual work that applies, and I'm like D&D.
Well, we live in Minneapolis, so I mean, we kind of understand the whole, thing of protests and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, the city of Minneapolis is using Team to conduct its business.
So
we're like a third of the way through, guys. So buckle up.
Yeah. No, I'm almost done. I'm gonna stop here in a couple. But this one I really like because, quite honestly, whiteboard in Teams sucks. I'm sorry that may not get me any kudos from anybody, but the whiteboard experience in the standalone whiteboard app is great. What you get in Teams leaves much to be desired. So they're going to be updating whiteboard in Teams with new features, including sticky notes, pen and ink, and drag and drop capabilities. So this enables people who don't have access to a touchscreen or Surface Hub to participate in whiteboarding sessions. Anything they can do to make that more native and more useful. We've got some people like, why would I want to use whiteboard?
I like how whiteboard in Teams didn't have the pen and ink functionality before, which is like basic whiteboard functionality.
Yeah. Like, there's just all kinds of things that's like, oh, look at all these things I can't do in whiteboard in Teams. So we've not actually rolled it out or pushed it really hard because, the experience in Teams was not great. So this should start helping to address some of the feature parity there. One last thing, because I did a Spark 1 tip or a 1-minute Office Magic tip on this today for Outlook on the web, the suggested replies, that's now going to come to Teams chat. So it'll create short responses based on the context of the previous message. So I think this is great. Once again, for the Fat Thumb Society, we don't have to sit there and go, you're welcome, and it took us 14 tries as we backspace through everything. It may pop up and say, oh, did you want to say you're welcome? Yes, click, boom, I'm done. So I like that a lot.
Yeah. I was just going to say, we'll throw it out there too. There's actually quite a bit of Teams and Surface Hub updates coming through. We don't want to spend a whole bunch of time talking to it. We realize not everyone listening is going to have a $30,000 device to use. But if your company does happen to have Surface Hubs, it's probably worth seeking out the roadmap and going through and just searching for Surface Hub or Team Surface Hub. There's 4 or 5 different updates that they've added to the roadmap for the Surface Hub. So not out yet, but stuff they're planning on doing. I know in our world, there's a lot lacking where you can't even really use Surface Hubs with Whiteboard with GCC or GCC High. Hopefully that gets fixed soon, but if you are a company out there that has a Service Hub, just know there's a decent amount of stuff added to the roadmap that you may want to look up.
Yeah. And much as Adam said, there are some even more Microsoft Teams stuff out there, but I think this gives you kind of the high-level things that you're probably going to see as a regular daily user of Teams. Some of the other things, as he said, are more Surface Hub. Some of the things you may not have, certain device compatibilities and things like that. But again, take a look at the roadmap if you want to get the complete list of things. But rest assured, and suffice it to say, Microsoft Teams has a lot of stuff in development. So I could see that possibly August, September, October-ish could be a rollout of a ton of new features that'll be really, really cool.
Yeah, there's one more thing that I wanted to mention, and then I know Tamara may have a couple things. I know there's a couple other things she highlighted as being interested in, at least. The one thing I'm going to throw out there that's nerdy that I definitely love, MIP, so Microsoft Information Protection, is coming out with basically trainable automated machine learning classifiers. So if you work in an industry that you have a certain type of sensitive information type that you want to teach Microsoft how to learn, DLP could do this for a bit, where you could go through, like, say you're a patent office and you do patents, you could teach it how, like, the specific patents that you review, how to go through and review and catch that. Well, just in general, obviously labeling has kind of changed over the last couple of years from Microsoft. The idea of being able to do MIP labels on top of things to classify certain data, they're basically bringing the ability to machine learning teach them how to go through and find out information for you. Now, I'm a huge nerd. I love types of stuff like this. I'm also somewhat skeptical. I'll say going through and doing this, I am sure Microsoft will have a demo that shows this working wonderfully, where there's a specific type of feature that they want. In practice, working with the government as much as I had, a lot of times, for instance, when you're dealing with something like CUI data, which just means classified undisclosed information, that can literally be anything. So trying to go through and teach something to find something that doesn't have a repeatable form or a certain number set or a pattern that's following is almost impossible in practice. So I think if what you're doing and wanting to train it on has a discernible pattern, I think this is going to be cool. I think you could save some time with it. If it doesn't, I don't really think this is going to be any help to you. The one final thing I'll keep out, unless you guys have one thing you wanted to add in, there was one more thing that I thought was cool that I know I do all the time, so it's nice to see the feature in development. Anyone?
Go for it.
So it's OneDrive Move and Keep Sharing. So fairly often, I will go through and I will, like, upload something to OneDrive and then be like, okay, I should probably be a good corporate citizen, and if I'm sharing this with a customer, not have it in my OneDrive, I should probably move it somewhere else or do something like that. Basically now, if you have something in OneDrive or something that you've gone through and done, and you go and move it to a different shared library, it'll give you the options to basically inherit the permissions that it had in the original one as well. Since OneDrive is essentially permissions in SharePoint, the example I'm thinking of is I've created it in my OneDrive and decide, crap, I should probably put this in SharePoint or Teams. And when I go through and move it, once this feature is available, which it's not now, but once this feature is available, we'll theoretically inherit the permissions there. So it'll make the decision for me to redo it a lot easier, where I theoretically won't even have to tell the user that I've moved it. I just move it, and should theoretically then be good for them because I already have permissions to it, versus me having to move it, then giving them another link and having to explain why I moved it, then worry about, okay, I should probably remove their access to the OneDrive one so it's not confusing, all that junk.
Very
Awesome.
nice.
All right, so moving on, we're going to go to rolling out after this. I'm going to go ahead and let Tamara go again first, just because Tom got everything under Teams. So we're going to go ahead and let Tamara go again here first.
So there's a couple things out here for SharePoint. So there's SharePoint lists and libraries. A new calendar picker is coming out. So it's we're replacing the legacy calendar control with the latest Office Fabric calendar for the Gregorian calendar in SharePoint lists and libraries. Don't worry if you're not using a Gregorian calendar. They're keeping the old way of doing it. But the new calendar experience is going to be faster and delivers a more coherent experience across the different applications. And then also there's a Fluent Design updates for coherence for SharePoint. So Microsoft uses the Fluent Design system to ensure a cohesive and accessible design for all of Microsoft product users. And so what this means is it's going to be more accessible for people with disabilities. And it's also just going to be a much better user experience for people who aren't disabled. It means that some visual changes are going to occur. You're going to notice larger and bolder typefaces, increased occupancy, not occupancy. What's the word I'm trying to think of? It's opaque.
Opaque. There you go.
It's more opaque for drop shadows and rounder corners for squared graphical elements.
Oh, transparency?
So it's the opposite of transparency.
Fine.
It makes it more opaque.
Opaque was a good word.
I'm like, occupancy? No, it's not occupancy, Tamara. You're not going to have more people sitting on your SharePoint site.
Occupy SharePoint. Woo.
Yeah, Occupy SharePoint. We're the 1%ers.
So those are the big things in there for SharePoint in rolling out.
Tom?
So I'll go ahead because we leave all the geeky stuff for Adam.
Yeah.
There was one other SharePoint thing on there that I think is interesting. Active time spent reports for SharePoint site usage. So you'll be getting reports that say, hey, users are spending on average X amount of minutes on your site. I know that we have people who, well, yeah, but how long are they spending there? Well, now you'll be able to find that out. There's one that I just noticed. I had it highlighted, but I wasn't planning on talking to it, except today when I put out my 1 Minute Office Magic tip about contextual search, which I'll touch on in a minute, they said, well, maybe you can make me hate Teams less. How come I can't have a meeting that's split out to a separate window so when I go in and I want to see the rest of Teams, I don't get that little window up in the corner? Well, I see now that they have multi-window experiences are coming to Teams meetings and calling. You know, the ability to pop out meetings and calling into separate windows to help them optimize their workflow. So for people who are used to doing that with chats, and you can pop out separate windows for chats, now you're going to actually be able to do that with Teams meetings. This will make the person I'm going to respond to after this call very, very happy. Don't know if it'll make him hate Teams less, but it will make him very, very happy for that. Word is now getting the ability to create and assign tasks to collaborators in Word documents to track ownership and get work done. I don't know where these tasks are going to be stored at, whether they're going to be put in Planner, whether they'll just be stored within the document themselves so people have to go out there and see what's going on. But I think that's cool as you're doing collaboration to say, okay, we need these 5 things taken care of, and you can assign them to different people. So I think that's really good. And then the very last one, and I alluded to it a little earlier with Microsoft Teams and contextual search, if you're in a channel or you're in a chat, much like when you're in Word and you go, hey, I need to find a word or phrase, Control F, boom, find out all those words. Now you can do that in a chat or a channel. Works really, really nicely because I took an example of somebody I chat with on a regular basis. I typed in the word user voice and I saw the 2 entries that they had responded back to me that mentioned the word user voice, and I could click on it and bring up that aspect. So I think the contextual search thing is going to be really cool. It's one of those things you'd think is almost a no-brainer, but once you realize it's there, it's like, oh, cool, this allows me to find information a lot faster. And if you have a whole lot of teams that you're part of, that's really a good thing. So those are all my rolling out ones, Adam.
I would like to just note that we laugh that I get all the nerdy ones in a video cast that we do talking about updates to a technology as a group. So I would just like to point out the juxtaposition. But going into the nerdy ones. So there's actually multiple cool things in rolling out that I think is probably worth noting. So I'm gonna start by saying if you don't currently use Advanced eDiscovery, which I know a lot of our government customers don't because it's not available for you yet, or if you haven't gone into it, one of the main things to know about Advanced eDiscovery is it fundamentally works different from regular eDiscovery, and that it uses the object of what they call custodian to handle everything. So rather than going through and saying, I want to look through all the communication for this keyword or this phrase, which is how the old content works. You can go through and say, okay, well, we are currently being sued because of this certain project. Bill was a project manager on that, so I'm going to go through and say, Bill is a custodian. I'm looking through stuff he touched, knowing he was a project manager on that. So you basically select users to be a driving force behind your discovery and stuff like that. You have notifications. But anyways, in going through and doing that, sometimes you might have a case where you have literally hundreds of custodians, and before you would have literally had to select them one at a time going through and doing it, which, as I'm sure you imagine, can be a nightmare. There is a very large federal agency that I actually worked through the process of talking about advanced e-discovery and how it would work, and that was one of the questions that came up. I was literally in a meeting with 58 people from this department talking about e-discovery, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, cool, and you have to select these custodians one at a time. And it's like, if they're a federal department, it might be like, they need to select Division 2 for, like, this case, which might be, hundreds of people. So they're adding a bulk import, which is cool. The other thing that I thought was kind of neat is that they're doing what they're calling new custodial data sources. So right now, when you go through, because it's driven by custodians or by people, if we're talking about Tom, we'd say, okay, I'm interested in Tom, but maybe there's a SharePoint site that I want to add as a data source to this e-discovery case, but I don't necessarily want it associated with Tom, because Tom may have restrictions of he's only looking for a certain date range where I need to do other date ranges for other people. Maybe Tom was like a consultant for a week of this project. So now it's basically giving the ability where you can add data sources in an advanced e-discovery that doesn't use the mechanism of custodian, which kind of makes sense when you realize how everything works. Besides that, there was a couple other nerdy things that I thought were really cool. The whole idea of compliance, and there's a theory of what they call communication compliance. And that's basically, if you're going through, you need to look at all the communications that people are doing. If you need to make sure no one's sharing out classified CUI data, well, you want to go through and monitor everyone's communication. So there's a couple things that you can do. One, now they're adding it where you can say, okay, well, Tom was involved in the project. I need to look at all the communications to make sure he didn't share any secrets that he wasn't supposed to. Before, I would have had to go through and individually say I wanted to capture the thing of every team that Tom happened to be in. Now I can just say every team Tom's in, do that, and it's good, rather than me having to manually do it as admin. So it's a time saver for us. The other thing that I thought was kind of cool, for organizations that are in a permanent hybrid state, you now can actually monitor Exchange users who are on-prems, messages, and Teams. This matters if you know the geeky backend of how the technology was developed. When Skype first came along, they needed a place to store Skype messages for review, so they actually stored them in a folder in Exchange. Teams has somewhat followed along the same suit. So when you're talking about needing to e-discovery and legal holds and retention, Exchange is actually where the Teams communication data is stored, oddly enough. And so needing to be able to go through and do that, the fact that you can now take on-premise users and look at it, because technically it's actually stored in Teams, not in Exchange. This is how it was built. The fact that you can take on-prem users and still, do analysis and e-discovery or communications compliance on top of their Teams data is actually pretty cool when you know how the technology works. So final thing, Tamara and I have a little celebration to have for this. GCC High and DoD users can now have 300 participants in a meeting. So again, some of our larger customers are going to be very, very excited about this. All right, so finally moving on to launch. I know there's a ton of stuff in here. Tamara, you're going to go ahead and go first, because I feel like Tom and I talk about a lot of things. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go first again.
Awesome. Read receipts in private chats. How many times have you gone into a chat and you're like, does anybody even read my chat? Is this person reading my chat? Is it getting through? Or is it just like email and they're ignoring it? And so you can get read receipts. So increase the communication transparency with Teams. And the read receipts in the private chat allows the sender to know when the message was read by the recipient. So
I love that little eyeball when it pops up next to my stuff. Yeah. It's like, yes, eyeball, they've seen it. Yay.
And then first line workers, an audit log in shifts in Teams. So the shifts audit log are provided in the centralized O365 Security and Compliance Center in alignment with the O365 customer promises and to support customer needs. So you can see what's been going on in shifts, who's been bidding shifts and who's moving around shifts. So it's nice that there's an audit log.
Very cool.
Anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nope.
Tom, my good friend, go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'm actually going to show great restraint and only talk about one item here because we've talked about so many of these other things so many other times. Customized search results for your organization. This is now launched, which means you can start to generate custom search result pages and web parts in Microsoft Search. So much like you used to be able to do customized search results and stuff like SharePoint 2010, things like that, you're now starting to get some of that in SharePoint Online and being able to use the web parts in a modern page to start giving you different result pages rather than just the standard one if for some reason that doesn't work for you. It says it also allows you to use web parts developed using the SharePoint framework to extend search queries. So again, this may not be something that you have the wherewithal to do on your own because you don't know how to do SharePoint framework, you don't want to do custom coding. But for the people who want to go in and start doing some fancy stuff involving code and semicolons and all those good things, you're now going to have the opportunity to do that to extend some of your search results. So something to look forward to if that's your cup of tea.
So I'm going to do two things real quick, and then we'll move on to canceled. So one of them is very, very high level and very easy. Basically, there's a new update for Cloud App Security that basically just says, by default, Cloud App Security only stores information for, let me make sure I get the window right, for 90 days. If you wanted to extend that, Cloud App Security has now made it so it's easy to just automatically ingest that data into Azure Sentinel. We haven't talked about Azure Sentinel too much on this recording, but Azure Sentinel is probably my favorite new feature by Microsoft. It's an Azure feature. It's basically an online SIEM. So it's a way to aggregate all of your security logs, and there's some really, really cool machine learning and automation stuff you can do with it. It's basically a single pane of glass to get an understanding of everything going on security in your world. The one caveat I'll throw out here, just because I don't want to give a complete blind endorsement, is you really kind of have to, take that and the whole pinata. You really have to kind of dive in fully into Sentinel, because you can't, for instance, go through and put your Cloud App Security alerts in Sentinel so you get longer retention and start using that, and then still resolve stuff in Cloud App Security. At that point, you need to do it in Sentinel, because resolving one in Cloud App Security will not resolve it in Sentinel, and vice versa. So you kind of have to pick or choose. Like if you're going to do Sentinel, you have to fully do it. But just know, if you do use Cloud App Security, you want to stay longer than those 90-day logs. Maybe you're using a third-party service to do that right now. Really easy to ingest those into Sentinel and do it that way. The other one is just like a giant paragraph of information. I'm going to make it really, really simple for you. Microsoft Information Protection is coming out with a new thing called Data Classification Analytics. It's basically a way for you to get a better understanding of your data. Whether or not you're fully using MIP and have labels that you've already labeled stuff, it's going to go in and give you kind of an overview page that will give you a high-level understanding of the metadata, the types of information you have, everything top to bottom view. The idea is to make it so that you are utilizing the MIP product better. Now, like I said, supposedly this is going to work so you don't even have to have labels and stuff already created. It'll still give you some good information about what's going on. But even if you do have labels, it will then help better classify and give you insights into what's happening. Basically, if you use MIP or are thinking about using MIP, this should hopefully make your life easier. It's kind of like a summary and insights page for us all to use. Cool. Anyone else have anything in launched? I realize most of this stuff we've talked about.
Yep.
I'm cool.
So finally, I'm just going to cover this real quick. There are technically 3 items in canceled. Of those 3 items, one of them is an item that simply moved to another location. Outside of that, we do have 2 things that are canceled. One is new mobile app features. This is basically say, use channels and groups to help manage your videos and interact with Microsoft Form quizzes and stream videos, all directly from your mobile device. I don't know if this is going away or not. Honestly, even Tom's a huge fan of Stream. And Tom, do you even have the Stream app on your phone?
I've got the Stream app on my phone. If I've used it, that's a whole different question.
Yeah, like I don't really know anyone who's really like the Steam app or Stream app on my phone is the best. The Steam app would be different. The Stream app on my phone is the best thing ever. And so it's one of those things, I don't know how much that's going to impact people. The other one is they currently have SharePoint News notification configuration. It's basically configure personal email notifications for SharePoint News updates. This item is simply delayed. It's going to come back. Basically, they'd put it in development and had a rough timeline of them wanting to release it early next year. I don't know if they ran into more technical challenges they go up, but they're still planning on doing it. They're just not going to leave it to linger on the roadmap. So it's temporarily removed for now.
Yeah. I'm glad to see that it's not like, yep, we just canceled it, period. Because I thought the concept of having a consolidated email of, hey, here's all the SharePoint news update items that you may not have been aware of, but that could affect you. I could see with permissions and stuff like that where that may be kind of difficult to do. So I'm okay with seeing it delayed,
Sure.
so long as it's not
much
canceled.
better delayed instead of full canceled, for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, guys, as always, that was our pulse for the week. There's a lot of cool, exciting stuff. As a whole, we were talking about it. We love to see the investment in teams, but really there's a lot of cool things that are going through. I kind of feel like when the coronavirus first started happening, development slowed a little bit. We still had stuff to talk about the first couple of weeks because stuff was still coming out, but you kind of felt a lull. I think at this point, everyone's kind of used to working at home for Microsoft and doing remotely, and you're really seeing stuff ramp back up. And again, as someone who's worked in the industry for a bit, I'm sure Tamara and Tom will probably echo this. I love to see that it seems like they're really putting development in ways that are directly going to help people with the situation they're in now, which is just nice to see. So,
well, I think one thing that's kind of interesting too is that when the coronavirus hit and everybody started working from home, Teams was thrust into a, oh my God, we need to catch up mode because well, Zoom shows me this many, and Zoom does
even though
this,
it can be hacked by people, and it's
exactly
not secure,
who cares? I still need to have my doggy pictures in here, the whole
Yeah.
bit. I need to have my background that shows me in this, enterprise or something.
Yeah.
But it seems like, especially with the batch of team stuff that we had this time, they've gone beyond we're just trying to stay level with everybody to now we're taking it a step forward. And we're actually doing some stuff that's unique in the industry. So I think that's really a positive thing, that it's not just we're only going to try to be feature parity for all the other options that you have out there. We're going to try to make it something where you're going to want this because you can't find it anywhere else.
Well,
Right.
I'm sure I get somewhat biased, or I'm sure the news is somewhat curated to me that I get because, obviously we all know how Mr. Interwebs works with their crawlers and cookies and stuff. So I see articles, it seems nowadays, once a week from some technical publication of this new Teams app is going to be a Slack killer or something like that. It seems like every week it's someone talking up some new thing. Yeah, and again, it's cool to see there really is. You could see in our update this week, the first half of the show was on team updates. It really is. They're doing tons of development, but I couldn't agree with Tom more. It really seems like they're putting development in the right areas and really going from catch-up mode to industry leader mode, which is awesome to see.
Yep.
Well, anyways, guys, everyone stay home, be safe, don't get corona. We will talk to everyone again next week, and appreciate, as always, your time.
Maybe next week I can do my mask through the whole thing here.
I feel safer.
Yes, actually, for those of you who don't know, Tamara and I are together partners. She's in the dining room. I'm in my office right now. I will open the door in about 5 seconds and go to see her 10 feet away.
It looks like you're in a market in either Thailand or the Middle East or something. I'm not sure.
This would be in, what was it, Cairo?
In Egypt.
It was the souk in Cairo, yeah.
Fair. Anyways, guys, have a lovely week. We appreciate you guys' attention and help as always, and stay safe out there.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Bye now.